Hello, everybody, and welcome back to R-Rated, where today we're going to be looking at some more of... Bad boy. Yeah, feels so good. Let's go. I'm Rick here on the D-pad, and we're looking at the second episode of Ms. Marvel today, Crushed. The first episode saw Kamala Khan discovering these strange hard light abilities as they kind of become named in this episode. And this one kind of deals with her struggling to kind of understand these powers while also getting kind of a boost in confidence. Things are kind of going her way and sort of feeling more, able and more like peppy and stuff in life. As sort of a broad overview of this. So the first episode had a ton of like animations and imagination stuff going on and all these little flourishes to the general kind of look and feel of the episode. And this one does have some of those, but it doesn't have quite as many, which, I assumed that the first one is kind of establishing this as her kind of character trait. But, I was hoping that they would keep a little bit more of it. We meet a new senior named Kamran. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that quite right, Kamran. And he is, I believe, an Indian boy who is a new senior at the high school who Kamala bumps into and immediately is smitten. And there's a point where we see, through Kamala's eyes how she sees him and there's like light coming off him and little like 100 emojis and, all of that sort of thing. It was a nice little touch. There weren't too many of these going on in the episode, though. The one that did stand out, though, is after a party and she's standing there just kind of like half swooning over the guy. There's a name for this effect, and I forget exactly what it is, but as the camera kind of starts to slowly like focus away and blur out and all of that, the little... Oh, man, I used to know the name for this. So it's essentially if you see little specks of light and then they are blurred in a camera lens, it's like spectral something? Oh, I forget. Essentially, normally you'd expect them to be kind of discs of light, little discs of light. But depending on how you shape the aperture of your camera, or if you have essentially like a cutout essentially around there, you can actually make it... have those discs take different shapes. And in this case, they are in the shape of little hearts, which I forget if it was used exactly that same way, but it immediately called to mind Scott Pilgrim versus the World, where they do that during, I think, the bus scene where Ramona is kind of telling Scott about her exes. And it's all kind of starting to come together for him that like what's going on. But it's a really cool effect, and like it's not exactly super subtle, but it does kind of just appear from nowhere. And it's, even better by the fact that it's, generally speaking, it's a practical effect. It's not really one that's being done with VFX. Generally speaking, it's one that's done with in-camera trickery, which is really cool. And I thought the effect was really nice. I thought it did a good job of kind of accentuating the stuff that was going on. There was like a neon light of a heart directly behind her head during the same thing. So like you get that kind of a vibe to everything that's going on. But I thought that was a nice touch. There's a lot of Kamala kind of figuring out her powers, testing them out, getting more confident, doing slightly more dangerous things as she gets there. It's a very Spider-Man kind of sequence. It reminded me a lot of every first Spider-Man movie, essentially, where you get the kind of like, oh, I'm learning this thing, I'm trying this and doing that. And you get some of that with Kamala learning these powers and trying them out with Bruno there to help, including a bit where she kind of falls and he's got her or whatever, and she's like, you have to let go, and he drops her, and she drops like 6 inches to the ground. Cute little moment. I like that. This show definitely has a lot of meta awareness of films. Like, it references films all the time. The last episode had Mulan. It had, oh god, there was another one that really like stuck out. Darth Vader, and obviously Disney properties, so like they're easy to do in a Marvel show. This time around we had the Lion King with the kind of like doing the thing. Actually, maybe it wasn't really so much Lion King. Maybe it's more Titanic with the you have to let go. I don't know. But weirdly enough, we also got a Devil Wears Prada reference during. So Mr. Wilson has Bruno come in and tell him that he's been accepted into the early immersion program at Caltech. And so his next semester, he's going to be moving to California, and it's entirely a free ride. Everything's covered. He's just got to leave to California, which obviously for Bruno, being a teenage boy who is, struggling with stuff, dealing with his crush, he is not super thrilled about suddenly having to move 3,000 miles away. But in the midst of that, Mr. Wilson is like, you ever seen a movie where, this is the moment where it's like, oh, you get this really great opportunity, or you get to, I have never even seen The Devil Wears Prada, but the reference was like super obvious. And like, oh, you get to have your moment from Meryl Streep. This is your thing. And it's like, whoa, okay, that's going to go over a couple people's heads. It mostly went over mine, except I was like, wait, hang on. And I literally had to Google like Meryl Streep, Devil Wears Prada. Okay, all right, so I'm not crazy. That is the reference that they're going with for this. I thought that was kind of just an interesting. It's interesting how much that is happening with this particular show. But yeah, the Devil Wears Prada bit just kind of stood out to me as like, oh, okay. There are two major things that are really going on with this episode, though. It really breaks down into two really significant chunks. The first one, I would say, is there's a lot of focus on Kamala's heritage, specifically her line of descent, I guess. I don't know how to describe that. Her genealogy through her mother, and to her mother's mother, to her mother's mother's mother. So there's Kamala, there's her mother Muniba, there's her grandmother Sana, I think, and then Sana's mother, so Kamala's great-grandmother, is Aisha. And apparently something happened with Aisha that brought shame upon the entire family, and we get a story of how when Sana was a toddler, her and her father barely managed to get onto the very last train out of the city during the partition, the division of India into modern-day India and Pakistan. And Sana later described that she followed starlight, I think, to find her father again, even though she was just a toddler. And her father had like a bad leg injury, needed a walking stick to move around. But it's described that Aisha was gone at some point. They just so Kamala's father kind of states it as if she was someone who died that day, but we find out later that Kamala's mother doesn't even want Kamala to know the name Aisha in general, and she FaceTimes with her grandmother, and her grandmother is also kind of dodgy when she starts asking questions about the bangle. And there's obviously some more stuff that's going on here. And it all seems to tie in with Aisha, and the bangle belongs to Aisha. And we discover during some of the like Eid celebrations that are going on, later on in the episode, that there's a lot of rumors that have, floated around about Aisha. And one she's described as a, just a snake of a woman kind of thing, which I would be very amused if that turns out to be some kind of literal thing, like she's some kind of actual, snake charmer or a snake transmogrifier kind of deal or something. I don't know. But there's rumors that she had an affair. There's rumors that she killed a man. There's rumors that she had a secret affair and had an entire other family. But there's obviously something going on, and at various points during the episode, while wearing the bangle, Kamala sees a vision of a woman engulfed in light, like golden light, as opposed to the more prismatic kind of purpley light that Kamala has. And we see the woman at a distance once, then much closer a second time. She's not someone that we've seen so far, and I have to wonder if that's Aisha that we're seeing in the light. And obviously we're setting up some mysteries. We got to have that intrigue going for where this story is going to go. It should be noted too that Bruno has been running tests essentially on Kamala, and the abilities that she has are not coming from the bangle. They're coming from within Kamala herself. So curious what's happening with that. If the bangle actually mattered, if it's helping her tap into something, if it's some kind of symbiotic relationship thing that's going on. So that'll be an interesting thing to see kind of play out there. The other major element of this episode is Kamala meeting and kind of falling for this, this boy, Kamran, who he's a senior. I think Kamala's a junior. And, they meet and they hit it off right away. They bond over Shah Rukh Khan movies. They actually have a conversation at one point where they mention that both of them, their mothers, have a huge crush on Kingo, who is the character out of The Eternals, who is basically just decided to become a Bollywood actor and just stick around and do that and keep pretending essentially to be his own son over and over again so that he could continue to act and just kind of have fun with that. I think it was Kumail Nanjiani. Oh my God, was it? Now I'm going to be embarrassed if it wasn't. Oh no. Yes, Kumail Nanjiani. So that was kind of a fun little reference on that. And I don't know if Kamala's mother has a crush on Kingo, which I assume is like the current character that Kingo is performing of himself, essentially, whereas Kamran's mother is into Kingo Senior, which I guess means that it's the previous pretend generation of Kingo actors. Though, well, I guess we can jump to the end on this one where we actually meet Kamran's mother, and she says she's been waiting a very, very long time to meet Kamala. And I'm curious if that's a little bit more literal than we're giving credit for, where is that, is she someone who's been waiting for, decades as opposed to just waiting to meet her, recently kind of thing, is it she's waiting for like a prophecy to be fulfilled, or she's been following this bangle for a while? Could she just be Aisha or something? And, is the bangle related to, say, the 10 rings or something? Who knows? There's a joke that's made where Kamala's brother, Amir, sees Kamala and Kamran having like out at essentially on like a little mini date, having lunch somewhere, and she pretends that Kamran is like a distant cousin, essentially. And at first I was like, oh, Amir's not going to buy this at all. And I'm still not entirely convinced that he did. But now I'm like, oh no, is that not going to actually be a joke? Are they actually slightly sort of weirdly related despite all of the scenes that are going on here? Kamran is very much like the cool kid, like in terms of not like, oh, the bro or whatever, but just like the I don't know if I wouldn't even say like cool loner type, because he seems generally pretty friendly and affable and stuff. Just sort of the guy who is, cool to a point where you as the nerd are not going to be expecting to like interact really, kind of thing. I don't know. I'm not describing that very well. High school was a long time ago for me. But as Kamala is, tripping over herself, interacting with Kamran, Bruno is like visibly dejected all up and down this episode, to a point where it's like, oh, this hurts. Oh, this hurts to watch. We have to watch in real time as Bruno has to deal with, because he obviously has a crush on Kamala and has to now deal with Kamala having a crush on somebody else and instantly hitting it off. Like, they hit it off extremely fast. And Bruno keeps like interjecting himself to try to kind of cock block and just be in the way. And it's like this hurts so much. It super hurts so much. And we get the final, that final piece of like, oh, Kamran's mother has been specifically looking for Kamala. So is this actually like legit, or is it like they've been following her and like tracking her and kind of figuring out her life and all of this while they've been waiting for her powers to emerge? There's also this kind of little mini subplot. It seems like they're going to be our earlier antagonists of the series, which is the Department of Damage Control. So the DODC was set up earlier on in the MCU. We got, most notably, they showed up in Spider-Man Homecoming, which is kind of fitting in its own way that we've got another like origin story for a high school character where the DODC is involved. But this time around, so it's a department, a U.S. department that was set up by Tony Stark and the U.S. government. And the idea is essentially that anytime there's fallout from superhero stuff going on, they swoop in to kind of clean things up and fix the place. And you get little hints of Stark tech in there. They have drones that look very similar to the drones that we saw in Spider-Man No Way Home from the Edith program. And they also have these so it's amusing. They have these big future guns, and they make the same sound as the arc reactor, which makes sense. It is presumably Stark tech or lone Stark tech or something. But what I find very interesting about that is these guns presumably use some kind of arc reactor tech as their energy source. The arc reactor was built off of specifications for an energy machine, an energy generating machine that was inspired by the Tesseract that Howard Stark built, based on the Tesseract. And the Tesseract was also being used at various points by Hydra to make energy weapons and energy guns that had their own sound, which also kind of sounded like the arc reactor thing. If you go back to Captain America, the first Avenger, the Hydra guns kind of sound like the little repulsor, beep, like that really high-pitched whine. So that's kind of an interesting thing that's going on there. But they wind up interrogating Zoe after Avenger Con to find out more about the superpowered individual, and they manage to squeeze out of her that Zoe's pretty sure that the person who she's referred to as Nightlight is South Asian, and that gives them a lead, and eventually they're able to just don't know how they figure it out, but they do manage to track down Kamala just off of that. And they almost get her, but she's able to escape. Cameron shows up with the car, and they drive off together. And that was just kind of okay, so these guys are definitely going to be kind of our setup for our early bad guys, and either Cameron's mother or Aisha or someone is going to be the kind of more main villain of the actual show. And we've got kind of these, we were doing a pretty good job of getting these things set up. We've got these various, threads. Oh, one thread that I didn't even talk about that we're going to be definitely seeing. I know exactly what this setup is meant for. So Nakia is she's convinced to run by Kamala for the mosque board, the board for their mosque that they worship at. And she makes Kamala her campaign manager. And I feel like anytime a movie or TV show does one of the, and you're going to be my campaign manager, is oh, this is code for right before the final act, right? Right to make sure that everything is at its lowest point. She's going to let down her friend and not be there for her when she needs her during her campaign. That's what's going to wind up happening based off of that. That's my guess anyway. I'll be very intrigued to see how that plays out, but my immediate assumption off of that is, oh, she's going to need her and she's not going to be there. So that should be interesting. Also, Nakia plays real dirty running for Mosque Board, where she talks with... So she's running against Kamala's father's best friend, and she convinces Kamala's father, you teach Kamala that if she works hard enough, she can achieve anything. And, between women's suffrage and dealing with bigotry in our lives and all of these things, you wouldn't want to set a bad example. You would want her to feel like she can do anything, right? And he's just standing there slack-jawed, presumably it's just sort of this awareness of oh shit, I'm getting played in real time. And I thought that was pretty slick. So that was kind of a fun thing there. Also, all of that food looked really delicious. What else? There's a lot. There's a couple of little bits and pieces there. Oh yeah, Yusuf tells the story of Sana within earshot of Muniba, despite it obviously being a really stressful thing for her to be hearing about. It's why would you? That seems really rude. Why would you do that so close to her like that? Oh God, the DODC agent, Agent Deaver, is trying to figure out the race of Nightlight, and is was she white? Is she Middle Eastern? Is she Latin American? Oh, I'm sorry. We're supposed to say Latin X now. I was oh God. felt my rib cage collapse a little bit. I was like, oh God, no. Why is this happening now? Maybe that's the point, but even still, I'm just like, oh Jesus. Also, the other drop about like, all right, look here, or the two of them confer after this, and it's like, okay, look here. Start looking into the local mosques as well. I know the FBI is already surveilling them, but check them anyway. And it's like, oh man, woof. Yeah. So that was an interesting. This was a good episode. There was a lot of dense stuff going on. Also, ice cream pizza is absolutely going to make a comeback. I think the Euro King is going to make some kind of ice cream pizza dish to sell to people from his food truck. Who knows? Ice cream pizza sounds awful, though, for the record. And I'm a person who doesn't even mind Hawaiian pizza. So take that as you will. Never had anchovies, though. Anchovies feels like a step too far. I've had mushrooms on pizza. Not often. Usually if it's like a steaky kind of thing, like if you do like a Philly cheesesteak style pizza, you can throw mushrooms on there and it kind of blends pretty well. I don't think I would necessarily have mushrooms just kind of on their own. Anchovies sound awful, though. I don't know. Anyway, I'm rambling. I am going to give this episode I'm going to give it an 8. I was on the fence between 7 and 8, but I think this one did a really good job of balancing a lot of different elements. It's not quite as good as the first episode, but it's not that far off, and we're getting to see this nice advancement of Kamala's powers and her struggling to balance her home life, school life, and this, like, her figuring out these powers and becoming, now she's a recognized, superhero, essentially. Even if she kind of botches, she saves a kid from falling from a tower of the mosque, but then has a vision of Aisha and, like, drops him, but is able to catch him, sort of, but kind of dropping him onto a car where he hurts his ankle. But she still did save him, and it seems like people are still like, whoa, holy shit, that was awesome. But I think, I think this episode is almost as good as the first, not quite as good as it, though, but pretty solid overall. I'm really interested to see where these go, especially now that we've got these new characters kind of jumping into the fray. I'll be very curious to see what the deal with Kamran's mother is, and learn the mysteries of Aisha and this bangle that no one wants to address. Muniba seemed to recognize it right away also, and I'm very curious if that's how much she knows, that she's specifically like, is this the stock standard, like, mom knows a secret and she's trying to keep it from her child to protect her kind of thing, or is it something else? But I would love to know what you guys thought of the episode. I would love to know what you thought of this episode as well. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with episode 3. Have a good one. I also noticed that they dropped the YouTuber Kamala thing like instantly after the beginning of the first episode. That did kind of bug me a little because it seemed like, it'd be a fun thing to have her like kind of come back to now and then. Anyway, see you later. Bye.